Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Johnson, and I am so excited to have everyone join us to Financial Joy School's final seminar in our amazing 3-seminar series. And we want to thank Mr. Olin Douglas and Jesse Barco for their wealth of knowledge, pun intended, that they shared with us these past couple of weeks. So this afternoon, we are so excited to have Cody Barbo to discuss what is a will, which is a very, very important topic. So Cody is an entrepreneur and 2-time founder from San Diego, California. Cody currently serves as founder of Trust and Will, the easy, fast, and secure way to set up your estate plan online. We also wanted to note that Trust and Will has raised over $23 million. He has also served as CEO at his last company, Industry, which is a LinkedIn for the service and hospitality industry. Cody took the company from an idea to millions of dollars raised to build out their platform, team, and more. Cody is also the former CEO of Associated Students, which is a $26 million nonprofit in San Diego. And Cody also serves on the San Diego State University Alumni Board of Advisors. Mr. Barbo is a husband, father, and visionary. So welcome, Cody. And before he gets started, we have factored in time for Q&A after the presentation, but please feel free to ask questions in the chat function throughout the seminar as we will be monitoring them. So I'm going to kick this over to the mastermind, visionary, and founder of Financial Joy School, Ruby Taylor.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Natalie, for that warm introduction. We greatly appreciate you and your hard work during the 3 seminars. Today is our last seminar, and I am super duper excited to end on this note. And we will be talking about trust and wills, right? Because it is so important for us to transfer over our wealth. I am your host and the founder of Financial Joy School. We are on a mission to close the racial wealth gap for Black and Brown people by helping them build generational wealth through long-term investing. Check us out at financialjoyschool.com. We just became partners with the amazing NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center and Wells Fargo Social Impact Foundation. We will be giving away 10,000 legacy card games to help families build generational wealth. With all of that said, let's get into this amazing seminar with the amazing Cody Barbo. And not only is he a friend, he is a supporter. He was our first sponsor for the Financial Joy School seminars, and we will always be what is the word, appreciative for his support. And so, Cody, come on and tell us about yourself. Who are you?
Hey.
Why did you get started with Trust and Will? Let's go.
What's up, Ruby? And hey, everyone, happy Saturday. Hope you're having a beautiful weekend. And before I talk anything about my background in Trust and Will, just wishing everyone an early and very happy Thanksgiving. So I hope everyone has some fun times planned, some good food, and yeah, just really grateful this time of year. And I hope it's a reminder to us all that there's a lot of good in life still, even though there's ups and downs. So I just wanted to start there. With that said, I am based in San Diego, California. Been here for the last 15 years. I grew up in California, though, my whole life. And I've only known entrepreneurship. After I finished up school at San Diego State, I did my first startup out of school, which I call my practice run. It was a social media app. I think everybody was chasing that back in 2010, 2011. But it led me up to industry, my last company that Natalie had mentioned, which was building a professional network for the hospitality industry. I'd worked in restaurants, and I was surprised that people didn't use LinkedIn. And having 1 in 10 working Americans work in a restaurant for their careers. In fact, 1 of 3 Americans have worked in a restaurant at some point in their life. So maybe relevant for some of the listeners here. I really was like, how is there not a better place for people to professionally connect? And also for restaurants, bars, even hotels to help source talent. So we scaled that business, raised a couple $1 million from investors, scaled the team to 25, and we're servicing about 12 markets on the West Coast. And it was, it's still operating today. It was really a wonderful chapter, the first 4 years that I was with it as founder and CEO. But this challenge in my personal life came up, which is part of the reason why I'm here today, is to talk about Trust and Will. How did a non-estate planning attorney end up starting an estate planning company? And it really came out of my own needs. I was getting married in the fall of 2017. And my wife and we had sat down and had that rather uncomfortable conversation of, hey, we should probably talk to like a financial advisor. We should set up life insurance. We should we have to file taxes together. What is that all involved with? And with estate planning, to give a little personal context, my wife had lost her father early on when we started dating. So there's stuff that kept coming up. I mean, every time we met with the stepmom, something would come up. And it's just like that legacy, his legacy, Chuck, it always has stuck with us for, 10 years now. And we felt like when we got married, it was at least worth exploring a conversation with attorneys. Now, the thing that I don't know if any of you have gone through this yourselves, if you've met with an estate planning attorney, or if you even went the route of setting up your estate plan with an estate planning attorney, it is crazy expensive. I mean, even on the cheap end, $2,000, most estate planning attorneys are charging $3,000 to $5,000. And that's just insane. I mean, in my late 20s, my wife and I were not about to drop that. I mean, we haven't even bought a house yet. And really this idea that this shouldn't be this like daunting, kind of complicated process. So we're like, there's got to be someone doing this online that's doing is easy for people that are getting married, people that have kids at home, people that are taking care of a loved one. And I was really just dissatisfied with what the market had, both online and offline. So while my wife is not my co-founder, although I do report to her, my co-founders, Daniel and Brian, I've been friends for 7 years now, and they've been in software, and we're all now married with kids of our own. So it just makes this a real time in life, not just for ourselves as parents, but also as we think through the lens of our own parents. My parents are a little bit older, modest retirement. And it took this kind of personal reasoning to want to set it up for myself to actually have the conversation with my parents. I'm like, hey, mom and dad, do you guys have an estate plan? And my mom goes, yeah, we set up a trust. And I'm like, hey, you're not getting any younger. Like, why have you not brought it up with myself or my younger brother, Ty? And they're like, well, we didn't know when the right time was. And there's never a right time. It's not a comfortable conversation to have. But, my mom went into the garage, gets this box. In that box is a binder. In that binder is the trust that they had set up about 5-6 years prior with an attorney. And, I've kind of reading through it, and the language is fairly complex, but I see my name and my brother's name a lot in there. And I was like, I think this means we have a lot of responsibility. And I don't really know what that means. And I remember asking her, I was like, hey, look, like, I hope you guys are around for a long time. I need babysitters for our daughter, but also I want them to be a part of our lives for as long as possible. And I was like, who do I call if something happens to you? That was my first question. And they're like, well, our attorney's retired. I was like, who do I call? What decisions am I supposed to make here? I see my name a lot. I see that Ty, my brother Ty and I, our names a lot. What's our responsibility? And not only is it questions at the top of my head, like the house, right? The financial accounts, the life insurance, but they're just their assets, the things that they own, whether it's the photo albums that they've collected over the years, or it's the cars, and even thinking through final arrangements, burial, cremation. All this stuff was called out, of course, in their estate plan. But it was the first time that I've been reading through this that I was like, oh, these are actual decisions that I'm going to be responsible for. My brother and I would be responsible for if they've passed. And I even joked with them a little bit, but I was somewhat serious. I was like, what about all your usernames and passwords? Like, how am I supposed to access all of your online accounts? And my mom has them stored somewhere in the house. And then the same question when it came to social media: what happens to your Facebook? What happens to your Instagram? What happens to that digital legacy if you're no longer here? What do you want to have happen to those accounts? Do you want them memorialized or shut down, or to have your internet history deleted forever? So it was a bit of an emotional but necessary conversation that I'm really happy that I had. So I'm thinking through this multi-generational experience, right? That's one of the things that Ruby and I originally connected on. And the biggest surprise in our exploration around estate planning as a non-attorney is why is it so complicated, or seemingly complicated? I was like, 95% of households in this country are fairly straightforward. They own a home, they have kids or grandkids, they have some life insurance, maybe some financial accounts, and maybe some traditions, some family heirlooms, photos, all the things that we want to pass down. It's not just wealth, right? And I think for so many folks out there, 60%, just to know the statistics, 60% of the population doesn't have an estate plan. And when we've talked to thousands, tens of thousands of people. And the thing that always struck is, well, why'd you do it? And overwhelmingly people said, when we have children. Minor children is number one trigger. Second would be the purchase of a home. It's the largest asset that most families will ever own. And then after that, it goes into the kind of more uncomfortable conversations, but they are triggering events. So you might have the death of a parent, you might have a health scare, you might have a divorce. And there's also the needs to have these documents, even if somebody's still alive. So if somebody, typically it's a parent or an aging loved one, their physical health and mental health is starting to degrade. And the healthcare documents really can play a powerful impact. So power of attorney giving you the ability to make medical, financial decisions on somebody's behalf. And it really becomes an act of love. And that's how we looked at this whole opportunity in creating the business that we now have today, Trust and Mull, is that you don't do this really for yourself, but you do it for your loved ones. And you make it easier for them, especially if it's your kids, even if they're adults or minor children. So we started the company in late 2017, we incorporated. And since then, we've rolled out a product that I'm going to show you a little bit and give you a estate planning 101 today that we're really proud of. We've helped about 300,000 families in the last 4 years in all 50 states with our experience. Get this process started, make it less intimidating, more approachable, inclusive, and also having a really high touch customer support. And that's been kind of our ethos from the start, is that this stuff can be scary and we try to make it not. And when you come to a website and you go through Trust and Mull, you don't have to talk to anybody. We got great educational content, but we do have humans 7 days a week. And they're almost always called out in our 5-star reviews. We got Ashley, Christopher, Meg, Megan, Aaron, Fabio, and others that will be joining the team. And it's really powerful to see those names called out in our reviews. We really take care of the families that we serve. And that's where I want to focus a little bit today. As Ruby and Natalie mentioned, we've raised quite a bit in venture capital. We now have about 60 people on our team. And this vision to help build the TurboTax for estate planning. We want to help millions, if not tens of millions of families in the future be able to do this easily and affordably online. And I'm just really proud of the journey we've been on, especially now as a father to a daughter. I think about my legacy, and I also think about the company's legacy. And there's this importance of having purpose just beyond profits. So I'll take a quick pause there, Ruby and Natalie, before I dive into a little presentation. But hopefully that tells you a little bit about myself and why we got started.
Thank you so much, Cody. And before we really get into the meat and the potatoes, I want you to just talk about Give First, because that's how we initially met, because of this great philosophy. which is like also about legacy. And so can you just talk about that a little bit, and then after go right into the presentation?
Yeah, so I grew up with hospitality around me. My parents both worked in hospitality most of their careers. And I think that had a good effect on my brother and I, just seeing the way that my parents treated everybody as equals growing up. And even in college, I was pretty involved as a student leader, as Natalie mentioned. So my senior year at San Diego State, I was student body president. It's this really unique opportunity at 21 to be chief executive officer of a almost $30 million nonprofit organization that has, and this, guys, I'm going to apologize. This is Saturday, 9 a.m. my time. I got vacuums upstairs and a toddler upstairs. So if you hear background noise, I'm so sorry. But the idea that we really wanted to create this amazing student experience when I was a senior in college. And what that led to is just this mindset, as Ruby mentioned, of giving first, giving back, being a selfless leader and a servant leader. And as I've grown from student leader now to entrepreneur, and especially as a husband and father, it's a reminder that you have to have purpose above self. And the way that I think about give first, as Ruby mentioned with Trust and Mo, is that purpose beyond profits. So we made a bunch of commitments to the organization and as a company from the start that I think are worth noting. So one of those is an organization called Pledge 1% that gets encouragement for public companies and private companies to basically give back in a couple of different facets. So one of those is giving away our product for free or at a discount. One of our biggest product pushes to date for Pledge 1%. So we gave away 11,000 free wills during the pandemic to teachers and to healthcare workers as a response to the pandemic. We've continued that commitment with veterans, armed service members and their families. We actually give half off to military families. That's through a partnership called govx.com. Think of them like the Amazon.com for military members and their families. Really proud of that. There's also our volunteer commitment. So I serve on 2 nonprofit boards and we have volunteer 1%. So 4 paid days per year as a company for our employees to go and actually volunteer for any nonprofits of their choice. And it's something that we encourage. We have $250 contribution matching as well for any nonprofits that our team's contributing to. The third is of Pledge 1%. So there's 3 components. There's product, there's time, and then there's equity. I've made a binding pledge to give away part of my equity if we have a liquidity event. So we go public one day, which is our goal, or if we were to be acquired. The idea that there's importance, not just in giving back to the team and our shareholders, but also giving back to organizations that really can value from an investment. Some other stuff that we're proud of is our partnership with Ecology. We think a lot about our climate and our impact, and we use a lot of electricity in building a digital first experience. We have this commitment to the environment. So with Ecology, we've planted about 6,500 trees in a couple forests in North America, South America, and Europe. So we're actually a climate positive workforce and can feel proud of the usage of utilities. As a result, we're making these commitments to the environment. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we've done early on. We're actually going to publish our 2nd annual impact report on Giving Tuesday. So right around the corner here. And we'll link that to Ruby and Natalie and the followers here to take a look. But I think it just really does matter when we look back, and whatever the outcome of the company is, I want the team that worked here to be so proud of the experience, and that whatever organization they join next, or if they start a company themselves, these are the things that they're thinking about. They think about that legacy beyond themselves, right? It's purpose. And I'm happy, Ruby, that you called that out.
Thank you so much. And we are going to give away 2 free trust and wills today. Correct, Cody?
Yep.
So we will do that after Cody's presentation. All right. And so stick around so that you can win.
I'm going to go into the presentation next, Ruby.
Yes, sir.
All right, buckle up, everyone. We're talking estate planning 101 today. So maybe not what you expected on Saturday before Thanksgiving week, but super important information. So I'm going to share my screen here. Just give me just a second. And I'm going to assume that this is working. And if not, just give me a holler as I share my screen here. So estate planning is interesting. You know, we think a lot about this wealth transfer. The number in financial services, big banks that throw out this number, 65 trillion in wealth is going to pass between generations over the next 20 years. That is just insane. It's the largest wealth transfer in the world's history. Now, when you break that down at an individual level, it's usually, you know, a couple 100,000, and it's usually the value of the home. That is the overwhelming majority of equity and that people are going to get. And usually that home is liquidated. But sometimes it's not just the wealth and the assets, right? It's the traditions. It's the legacy that your family or your loved ones taught you and the way that you think about them, the way they made you feel. So there's a lot to trust and will that isn't just wealth related. And I think I want to anchor that as we go through some of these slides here. So why estate planning? So the idea that, are you guys able to see my screen too? I'm assuming no chat. Yeah, I think we're good.
Yep,
Cool.
clear.
Yeah, we're good.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. So this idea that you're coming to set up an estate plan to protect loved ones, to do an asset transfer, guardians for minors or dependents, incapacity protection. So the example that sometimes we give is you get in an accident or you're intubated for COVID, who can make decisions on your behalf while you're incapacitated? There's also charitable intent. If you want to do a planned gift, you leave money to charities, whether it's your church or it's a local organization, you can do that very straightforward in an estate plan. There's some tax control as well with an estate plan. And lastly, business succession, especially important for small business owners and how they want to pass on their business ownership to next of kin. So what is a will? A will, I think, is what most people are familiar with. You're either used to hearing it in movies or TV shows, or maybe, hopefully not, your parents didn't threaten to leave you out of it. But will is somewhat the more commonly accepted term that we're familiar with as a society and as a culture. But it is a legal document that governs the distribution of assets in your name. It determines who gets what when you die. And when you die without a will, your estate goes into it. It's a kind of a funky term, intestacy, dying intestate. And assets without a beneficiary designation will be distributed according to the laws of your state. So we have 50 states in this country. While there's a lot of similarities, every law in each state has a little bit of differences and nuances, but it's fairly straightforward. And we'll get into probate a little bit later, but I just wanted to open up with this. Now, probate, just at a high level, is so when you die, when we all die eventually, spoiler alert, we're all going to pass one day, you have a state-determined court process that determines if the will is valid, and the judge will sign a court order granting power to the executor. The executor is the person that you've called out in this will that's going to help move the assets and help distribute them to who you wanted and how you wanted your wishes carried out. The downside to probate is it's an expensive process. There's fees associated with probate that can get very expensive. And more than that, the time. In populous states like California, Texas, Florida, New York, probate can take years. And even worse than the time is that people, usually family members, can come out of the woodworks and try and make a claim that they're entitled to more of an asset or to an asset that they had no call out to. It's really unfortunate that probate a lot of the times tears families apart. And the goal of the estate plan, the will or the trust, which we'll get to in a few minutes, is really to keep families together and to keep this stuff controlled and organized. So the role of the executors, what's this terms, fancy term, all these terms, they've been around for 500 years, going back to like Shakespeare days, where wills originated. So the role of the executor is to establish validity of the will, to collect all of the assets of the estate, everything you called out in this document, and then to pay debts, pay final expenses, taxes, and most importantly, to distribute those assets to trustees or other beneficiaries. So typically it's children, sometimes it's nephews and nieces, grandchildren. And again, this is a very important role in a will. Now, a trust is the more confusing one. And when we started this company, a trust was what I was confused by. And I was like, man, you gotta be rich to have a trust. I don't need a trust. Because my wife, we set out to go set up a will. But what we found out, and now for sure confirmed with doing this for 4 years now, you don't have to be wealthy to have a trust. In fact, one of the biggest reasons why people should set up a trust or want to set up a trust is that it generally avoids probate. So you have a legal agreement in which an individual is giving control of a property to a person or an institution. That's called the trustee. So when you're creating this, you're the trustee. If I pass, my wife maybe becomes the trustee. And if we were to both pass, we have a secondary trustee backup. Now, what we're really focused on with the trust is avoiding probate. Think of the trust like a box. When you set up the trust, you have all of your assets. You have your home, you have financial and investment accounts. You're going to retitle those assets. And most institutions, your bank, your mortgage company, they have a process for doing this. It's not hard. It's time consuming. That's really the only downside to it is it just takes additional time. But this value, the trust of avoiding probate, gives the creator of it a lot more control in the process, which is why we recommend it for a lot of homeowners or people in populated states that don't want to have their families deal with the mess and expenses of probate. So the differences between these, so let's start with the will. So a will is simpler documents. You have the ability to name guardians for kids and pets, designate where assets go, and specify final arrangements, burial, cremation. It does go through probate after death, but if it's organized and everything's buttoned up, not too big a concern. There's just some court fees, but it does have limited control over distributions. Now on the trust side, is a lot greater control over when and how assets are distributed. Trusts only apply to the assets held in the trust. So one of the things that worries us sometimes is that people that set up a trust, they never retitle the assets. And if they're never retitled in the name of the trust, those assets will have to go through probate. This is what a lot of families, unfortunately, are going through every day in this country. Another big benefit, right, is to minimize or avoid probate entirely, as we've discussed. And also the trust has an impact while you're alive and also when you pass. So hopefully this overview here gives you just like kind of a in between of the overlap of wills and trusts and several of the differences between the two around property, possession of assets. Typically, once you get above a couple $100,000 in assets, which is the value of a home for most families, a trust becomes more important. And then trust avoids probate. It also has the tax benefits, and then there's stipulations on inheritance as well. So there's different types of trusts. When you get into the complexities of this, they can get very, very dense. And what we try to focus on is the revocable living trust. That's the trust that we sell. And that's the trust that most attorneys are going to package up for you. So this is created while you're alive. It can be changed or revoked is the term, and generally avoids probate. Now, there are more types of trusts that we are looking into as a company, but attorneys also can assist and be helpful in setting up. So testamentary trust is actually created using a will and creates the trust at the time of death. There's tax planning trust. There's a special needs trust. So if you have an adult child with special needs, you want to leave money for him or her over your passing. There's even pet trusts. So if you want to leave money to a cat or dog, people do it. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of nuances and complexities that you can go through in working with an attorney to set these types of trusts up. The more important documents is the healthcare documents. So HIP authorization, advanced care directive, power of attorney. This is some of the examples I gave in the opening where if you're incapacitated, who can make decisions on your behalf? If you're in a position where you are truly incapacitated and somebody has to decide whether or not to resuscitate, you can determine that for yourself. You can give that power to someone in your life, or you could give that power to the medical or healthcare professionals to make that decision, which is pretty hard thing. I mean, this weighs down on you when you're going through this process and deciding these things, and you can always change it, but just to call that out. And then also, again, who can, I think of elderly loved ones. My parents have had to do this with my grandmother, is who can make medical and financial decisions on somebody's behalf, especially as their mental health or their physical health starts to degrade. You have about 1 out of 3 adults as a caregiver in this country today. That number is going to hit about 1 out of 2 over the next 10 to 20 years. And a lot of us maybe are already doing that today in our lives, but a lot of us will if we're not yet. So what do you need to get started? I think a lot of what I've shared so far, hopefully, is fairly basic, high-level information. Estate planning can seem intimidating, and that's one of the big goals of Trust and Wills. We want to make it approachable, not intimidated. We give you as much information up front to get you excited about this sense of accomplishment and getting this done. And for most people, it takes 30 minutes to fill out all the information. What would traditionally be a clipboard at an attorney's office or a PDF that you would download online, we've created this beautiful, seamless experience, very similar to a TurboTax. If you've ever gone and filed your taxes online, or take the best online experience for banking that you may have done. And we've really tried to mimic that with Trust and Will. So basic information is one of the sections. It's information on you, your spouse, kids' legal names, birthdays. You have the guardians, which is if you have minor children or pets, who do you want to look after them if something happens to you? Next up is the executor and/or trustee. So nominating this person as responsible for carrying out the wishes of your estate plan. This includes distributing the assets of the estate or managing the trust as well. And lastly, on assets and distributions, a common question that comes up is, well, what percentage distributions do you want to split it evenly amongst your children? Do you want to give one kid the house, another kid the car? You can choose how these are to be divided. And a common thing that comes up too is age-based distribution. So you're not, a lot of parents have this fear, well, I don't want all my kids to get everything at 18 years old, which is completely understandable thinking back on what we were doing at 18. But the idea that you can choose an age-based provision for them before they receive an asset. Most people wait till they're a little bit older, but it's pretty common. So what you don't need is, and this does come up, is we're not collecting social security numbers. We're not collecting your bank account information. We don't need your online passwords, real estate titles, business ownership paperwork. We don't need any of that. So what we like is you can go very high level in what you provide to just catalog this stuff. It literally could be as simple as, I have my banking and financial and investment accounts with Wells Fargo. And as long as it's called out, it's going to make it easier for executor or trustee. But what happens is that sometimes people want to get more specific, and we've created a nice, simple product flow where you can fill out more about what types of accounts they are. And if you've ever used like a Credit Karma or a Mint.com, you know how you can log in with your bank information. So we have that. It's called a Plaid integration. So we're not actually collecting or storing your usernames or passwords. Those are completely anonymous to us, but at least you can get that real-time connectivity and pull in the account value if that's helpful. So the thing that we love is there's a new breed of estate planner. We have kind of two core demographics that we serve today. The primary, which you could probably guess, is folks that are 30 to 55. They have minor kids at home, typically a homeowner, and really just thinking about their loved ones, especially if they're going on an airplane. That's for whatever reason, even though it's the safest mode of transportation, that's such a common experience. People are like, first time on a flight without my kids. I wish I had this done. So that's one lens to think of it through. But the other is the real one, it's 55 plus. It's our second biggest segment. And just to give context from a partnership perspective, AARP, we're the exclusive estate planning provider for AARP in their 38 million members. And it's gone so well as a partnership, they actually invested in the company. And the goal there is that for 55 plus, 50% still does not have an estate plan. And a lot of them are coming to us because we're affordable, we're easy to use, and they feel accomplished, or they have peace of mind after they get this done. So I like the fact that we've built a product experience for all, but really leaning into parents or caregivers. That's also the big one in terms of who we serve. Now the products themselves, so we've tried to unbundle the estate plan. So I'll give a little context about how we structure our products today, where most estate planning attorneys will anchor in their services around a trust. And a lot of people don't need a trust. A lot of people can't afford the trust. And a lot of people don't want to go through this kind of multi-week experience with an attorney. It's not bad. It's just not that convenient. We have lives. A lot of us, my wife and I, we both work full time. Life just gets in the way. And that's why most people don't do this. So we tried to price our products affordably and unbundle them. So we call it kind of the a la carte model, where if you want the trust, you can come in and set up the trust. But most people with Trustimul start with our will package. And then we even offered a product for first-time parents that may not want to think through their assets or may not have any assets to call out. They just say, hey, look, if something happens to me, I want to choose who looks after my children, not the courts deciding. So that's why we have our Guardian product, which is our entry-level product. And then we have, just to give context, all of our documents, we're live in all 50 states and DC. They're state-specific. When you do complete the experience with Trustimul, you have to sign, notarize, and witness these documents. That's what makes them legally valid. Now, some states you have to do this offline, which isn't a problem, but you go to like a bank or a UPS store or postal store, or some cases you have a mobile notary that can come to your home. But it's really cool is that in several states in the US, we have a digital execution. So you'd almost expect in 2021, soon to be 22, that you can do this online. So in some states, you actually can do a video call with the notary. You show a valid form of ID, you do a digital signature, they do the digital notary stamp, and then those documents are stored digitally. And we really like that because it's a little more secure. And more importantly, there's a digital copy that's stored at the signature and notary page. And you can also share and notify loved ones if the estate plan is with Trustimul. So you just say, hey, look, you're not going to see the whole estate plan, but if I want to let my wife or if I want to let my parents know that the estate plan is with Trustimul, I have the ability to notify them through the product. And we have this beautiful package document. So for those that do choose the offline experience, we ship out of Chicago. They get to people's doorsteps within the week. And they're nice packaging. I have mine on the shelf behind me here, but hopefully that's a good intro to estate plan. I'll pause there, Ruby and Natalie.
Thank you so much. Before we get into the Q&A, we are going to give away 2 free trust and wills, depending upon what you will need. And so Natalie, are you ready to put up our will,
I am
our prize
ready,
will?
although I just feel
Cool.
like I don't want to share the prize. I just want to sit and talk to Patty about it. So nobody wins. I'm just joking.
Nobody.
We're gonna pull it up.
I'll speak to you on the side.
All right, here
Go
we
ahead.
go.
Oh, we got a spinner.
Oh yeah.
Oh, this is so cool. Hey, let's go, Anthony.
And the winner is Anthony.
Okay. Do you wanna do
Anthony,
the other one?
congratulations. You have just won a free will. I will be reaching out to you later on today or tomorrow to get your email address to like send over to Trust and Will, or they will send me the code. All right. So that's the
more?
first winner. Let's go with one more. Yes.
Natalie. No. Yay.
Topi, you have won. Congratulations. You are the winner of a free will and trust by an amazing company, which I have used. I have used Trust and Will myself, and like the process was seamless. It was so easy and hard emotionally, right? But like it is the discussions we need to have. We don't want to be like Prince. We don't be like Aretha Franklin and like have like everything a mess. We don't need that. We can really have this done well. So if you have any questions, you have an expert right here sharing his time. All you have to do is raise your hand and or ask a question and write in the chat, whichever you are more comfortable with.
So
Natalie, we have a question.
Yep. Jesse
Yeah.
says, is there an additional cost for updating documents periodically as a person's life changes? And that was a question I also had as far as like, what's the like, how often should you update?
Yeah, it's a great question. So all of the first year updates are included. So if you purchased your will today or any of our estate planning products, you can make unlimited updates in the first year. There's no additional cost. At the 12-month mark, or I think even right before like 11-month mark, we actually will send out an email to our members and really encourage you, hey, if any major life events have changed, we want you to come back and update. We charge a nominal fee. It's $12 for the will a year, and then it's $39 for the trust. And the purpose that is really important. It's not that we want to make more money. It's also, well, we have to operate as a business, but it's really for the ability to come back and make updates. The problem that most people, after they set up their estate plan, is they never update it again. They spend the thousands of dollars with the attorney. And if they go back to the attorney to do an amendment, that attorney is going to charge $1,000 for like adding another child, or you bought a new home. Like that's ridiculous. That's not realistic for most families in this country. So we wanted to charge, what's the lowest amount we can charge to still make some money as a company so we can exist, that gives our customers the ability to make these simple updates. So you'll get charged after the first year, small nominal fee. And the most important thing is that it's just peace of mind that everything's stored digitally. So even if there's no updates, Jesse, in the first year, the first 2 years, or even 3 years, but if there's that major change, you have more children, you buy a new home, you move states, you come back to Trust Them All, we're going to take good care of you. What we typically find is that because a lot of our customers are starting their families, that's what brought them to Trust Them All. They're having more children. They're buying from either starting as a renter, buying that first home, or going from that starter home to a bigger home. So we see a lot of our customers come back and happily pay to be able to make these updates easily. We have some huge product updates that we're going to introduce in Q1 that I wish I could share more about today. I'm trying to be hush hush because they're really cool. But at the end of the day, we're trying to drive as much value as we can at the lowest price, especially when it comes to that subscription, because we are mindful of people's expenses in life. And our hope is that this never breaks the bank. We can continue to be helpful where we can. So great question, Jesse. Power of attorney, do we have attorney partners in each state will review the document? Oh, great question from Dietrich here. So we have attorney support in about 10 states right now. So attorney support, we recently added earlier this year because we had customers that were coming to us to exactly Dietrich's question here. Hey, I just feel a little more comfortable if I had the chance to speak with an attorney so they could review my document, they could help me walk through the distributions, they could help me walk through the decisions, because I'll draw a line here for what we are. So Trustable is not a law firm, so we can't practice law in terms of our customer support. We answer probably 95% of questions without any hesitation, because there's a lot of common questions. Terms, what did this mean? How does this play out? They can chat with our team, humans, 7 days per week. What the attorney support option is that if we offer it in your state, you actually are going to sign a letter of engagement with an attorney, and it's typically structured in 2 phone calls. The first phone call is just an intake. Hey, I'm Cody. I'm in San Diego. I'm married. I got a kid. We're looking to buy a house next year. I just want to make sure that not only is the trust the right fit for me, but I'm also correctly cataloging all of my financial assets, my life insurance, anything that I should be thinking about that's not top of mind. So the attorney can come in and actually make recommendations of who I should choose as a guardian to my child, or who I should choose as a trustee outside of my wife. So that's kind of the first function. The second is usually post-purchase. So I've created the will, I've created the trust. I would actually prefer for the attorney to do a line-by-line item review. Most people don't need this because the software, the way that it's designed, it's a giant decision tree. So it's going to create that custom set of state-specific documents. And as long as your documents are signed, notarized, witnessed, they're good to go. And you can come back and make those changes at any time. But we like that attorney support is really that just additional peace of mind parachute more than anything. But there also can be a barrier if there's wealth complexity. So we've had like a few customers come in that are like ultra high net worth, like 10, 20, 30 million in assets. That's awesome that they came to TrustSmall, but their needs are far more complex than who we typically serve. So in some cases, the attorney can say, hey, look, you're going to need a more complex type of trust that thinks through inheritance tax implications. Let's make sure that you find the right attorney for you and your family. The more complex family situations that come up sometimes is a third marriage or adult child with special needs. So our product is very designed for divorce, mixed families. That's very common in this country. So we designed that from the start. But when you have a third marriage with kids and assets across all 3, it creates these edge cases that is like really in that outside spectrum of who we serve and operate. Or there's the example of an adult child with special needs. So you want to make sure there's funding set aside. We don't offer that type of trust today. We are looking at it in the future, but just to call that out specifically, if that answers your question, Dietrich. Cool.
Any more questions?
Yeah, sorry, my dad's calling me there. If we were to get acquired by another company, would it change any of the terms customers had? That's a good question. So I'll give an example actually of another. There's a startup out of Miami, Florida called Willing.com who is doing will-based estate plans. This company was acquired in fall of 2019 by MetLife, the insurance company. So all of those documents that they had served their customers before they were acquired, those documents, as long as they're signed, witnessed, notarized, they're legally valid, and they would live on in perpetuity. But if they wanted to then update those documents, from my understanding, they would have to go somewhere else. To update an estate plan is pretty straightforward with us. So we do accommodate for will updates. So if you did a will already and it's out of date, you would come to trustable.com and just work on what would look and feel like a new will. And as long as that's signed, notarized, witnessed, it's good to go. That's the copy that would go through probate. With a trust, it's a little bit different. The trust would be requiring what's called a trust restatement. If you're coming to TrustML with an existing trust, we would do a trust restatement. And that's just as taking the changes or additions that you want to add to it and kind of tacking it on to your existing trust. So if TrustML were to be acquired, our hope would be we continue to operate within a bigger company. So we would bring all of our customers with us along for the journey and be able to continue to serve them. That would be a big focus for us, but our priority is not to get acquired. We definitely want to take the company public, and we'll continue to raise multiple rounds of venture capital in order to get there. And that's the opening comment that Natalie made. We've raised 23 million in venture capital to date to invest in the business we have today, the quality customer experience, those 300,000 families we've taken care of so far. We'll continue to raise substantial rounds of venture capital in the future to continue to support our growth and hopefully not get acquired, and give customers a great experience. So hopefully, Jesse, that answered your question. Cool. Thank you.
We're going to do 2 more questions before we let Cody and you all have an amazing Saturday. 2 more questions. So here goes your chance.
How can we invest in Shayla? How can we invest in your company? I wish that we could open up investing. So I'll give context. Maybe it's just a general startup question. If any of you are Shark Tank fans, we've raised money from investors. And the way that we've grown the business is they started off with really small checks. So we raised a friends and family round when we started the company in late 2017, early 2018, and had about 27 investors that came in. And these are small checks. These were like $10,000 to $40,000 checks. I say small. I'll give context why. But we were a small team. There's 5 of us in a co-working space just trying to get a will product to market in California and Texas. We're like, let's just prove that we get customer demand, we have a somewhat of a business model, and that our customers have a good experience, that we could drive revenue, drive growth, and then raise more capital to continue to fuel the business. Because companies either self-fund from the start, or a lot of companies that are traditionally, Silicon Valley, New York based, are going after investment. So when we raised that family friends round, that got us through the first year. We then raised a $2 million seed round from VCs, venture capitalists. And then we raised from 2 million, we raised a $6 million round. From 6 million, we raised a $15 million round. So the check sizes have gone up substantially. So to answer the question, Shayla, which I really appreciate, we're not currently taking on investment. I very much appreciate it. And hopefully if we go public one day, all of you could potentially invest and be shareholders.
Don't forget about me, Cody.
Ruby wants
like some shares.
Ruby wants some equity.
Before I want a piece of this pie. Oh my God.
There are websites. So maybe just the comment. So we talk about financial inclusion. There's a couple of websites that do allow for everyday folks to invest and back startups. My only asterisk is that they're very risky. Startups have immensely high rates of failure, as any small business can. And I just want to err on the side of caution that while startup investments in the early days, you're typically like backing the founders and their vision, the mission, especially if it's a purpose-driven company, there's no guarantees on a return on investment. So I just want to be very cautious, as you might be able to invest in some of these platforms that are out there, a couple $100s to a couple thousand, which could be a big amount for some people, but there's no guarantees on a return. Now, if the company does go all the way and either gets acquired or does go public, those returns can be unbelievable multiples, 100x, 1000x multiples. And that's the business that angel investors and venture capitalists play. But it's risky. They're taking big bets. So just a little bit of caution if you do invest in startups.
I have a question. So I have elderly parents, 84 and like 80, I'm 3, and we have a huge family, right? They did a will, but they can't find it. And so what is your suggestion? Should we go ahead and create a new one, or should they have a lot of property?
Yeah.
And so would you recommend a will, or would you recommend a trust?
Depends what their state is. At the very least, a will, just get it done, right? This is the most important thing, is have something rather than nothing. So at least having an up-to-date will basically make the previous will ineffective. It'll rule it ineffective. And that's what would be used in probate. The value of a trust, right, is that it generally avoids probate. Property is usually the biggest asset that's being passed between generations, whether it's a home or multiple homes or land. So highly recommended in a populated state. A trust is the better vehicle because it just speeds up the process for transitioning those assets, but also helps avoid probate generally. So that's probably the biggest help, but get it done. That's important.
All right, we have one last question from Jeff.
Yeah, online help.
Do you see it, Cody?
Yeah, so I call this the peace of mind parachute. Hopefully work with me here. So we kind of have 4 layers as you're going through Trust and Will. The most important thing is we lead with education. So if you go to trustandwill.com, you click on our Learn Center. The Learn Center is the most robust place for content, all things estate planning, from very top of the top viewed articles, like what is an estate plan, what's the difference between a will or trust, to very specific things that are happening in the news cycle, like the Britney Spears conservatorship. We actually became like a go-to source for our perspective on all that. So Learn Center is number 1. 2 is we have Willow, which is our AI chat function within the product, where most people have basic questions. What's the difference between a will or trust? What's a trustee? What's an executor? What's the price? So Willow can automatically answer those. And then 3rd is our human support layer. So that's the team that we have across time zones, 7 days per week from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Jason, Ashley, Christopher, Megan, Aaron, Fabio, they're available to talk to any day. And if they don't get back to you in the evenings, first thing the next morning, that's what we're known for, is our 5-star support. And then in the some states that we offer attorney support, if you're in the product, it'll highlight if it's available in your state as that 4th option. If that answers, Jeff. Oh yeah, thanks for sharing, Shayla. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, highly recommend people get this done. Any other questions here in the few minutes we have left? Just so grateful for the time. I know estate planning is not the sexiest of topics for Saturday morning or afternoon, but I hope it was really helpful. And if there's any follow-up that you have, you reach out to myself, you reach out to my team. We exist to serve and help families. And if we can be helpful for you and your family, it'd be an honor for us to take you on as customers.
Thank you so much, Cody. Happy holidays to you and your amazing team. I love Trust and Will. They are my family, period. And I love them. And one last thing, we as Black and brown people have to get our wills and trust done. Do we want to talk about this stuff? No, I really dislike talking about it, because like it's hard. You really have to look at your final days, and like nobody wants to, but like you know what, it's done. I don't have to worry no more about my partner, about my kids, about my nieces and nephews, about like none of that. It's already sewed up, right? So talk about that. My wife, she wants to be cremated. I want to be buried, right? Now, I don't want to cremate her, right? But like that, but that is her wish. And guess what? It's in writing. Mm-hmm. And so like, I'm going to have to respect that.
Yeah.
And so that's why you want to go to like, go ahead and get this done, because it is vital for our peace of mind. Because you don't want a headache. We already will be dealing with grief. You don't want that burden plus that grief. Go ahead, Cody. You was gonna say something.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, like I have like company CEO Cody hat on sometimes, but then there's like dad and husband Cody. Ruby, we shared this as before we hopped on with the group here. Like when my wife and I went through and updated the estate plan after our daughter was born, I talk her ear off at dinner, whether she wants to hear it or not. I talk about my excitement and enthusiasm for the company every day, and the new team that's joining, new partnerships, and everything that we do well. But it was an emotional experience for us. Choosing guardians for our daughter was truly a daunting conversation. I wasn't expecting it to be that way. And I had to remind her, I was like, hey, you can always come back and change your decisions. This aren't permanent forever. You can come back and change them. The other one, Ruby, to your point, was on final arrangements. I would like to be cremated, but my wife wants to be buried. And it wasn't a debate necessarily. It just was different than what we were expecting, I think, of each other. You know, she's like, well, I thought you wanted to be buried next to me in life and death. And I was like, yeah, but I also, cremation is what my family and my parents are doing. And I, from a young age, thought that was the right path for me. So yeah, maybe I'll change my mind, listen to my wife. But even this is a funny one. We do have some fun. So one of our values of the company is fun. Music is actually one of the most interesting areas within the final arrangement section. Is people are very specific about the music they want played at their celebration of life or their burial. So what we see a lot of people do is they'll actually link it to like an Apple Music or a Spotify playlist. And of course, we're like, these are public playlists, they're not private. So it's wild to see. I think we have a blog post on our Learn Center that's like the top 10 most popular songs chosen. Some of it is gospel and religious affiliated, but a lot of it's like party music, which kind of threw us off and surprised us. Like people want to have a party. It's a celebration of life. So that's just something to think about as you go through. There's some fun, awesome and special moments as you fill this stuff out too.
Cody, thank you so much. My song, When I Am No Longer Here, is, I don't know the name, but I do know the words. I'm going to put on my robe and tell the story how I made it over as soon as I get home. It is a gospel song, and it is so freaking beautiful that like whoever is still alive, they better play that song at my funeral, or else I'm coming back to haunt them.
I love.
You all have an amazing, amazing Saturday. Please go and check out Trust and Will, and get yourself a Trust, get yourself a Will. Make sure that is sold up, and like spread the word about this amazing company. Have an amazing day. Thank you so much for like showing up and showing out. Peace and blessings to you all.
Thanks everyone. Happy Thanksgiving.